Dear students, welcome to our final chapter of Business 121, Principles of Money Management. And we'll be discussing the final chapters of life, retirement, and estate planning. And here's a little statistic that's interesting and timely. By 2030, 76 million baby boomers will have retired. Only 46 million Gen Xers will have come up to replace them. What are the consequences? What are the ramifications? What's going to happen when we lose a major chunk of the workforce? Yeah, we'll discuss that later on. Now, an oft-heard lament of senior citizens is, if I knew I was going to live this long, I would have done things a whole lot differently. So that's why we love to get you younger folks started early, which is what we hammered over the last several chapters regarding investing. And hopefully it'll tie together with what we're going to learn today. So let's get started on slide number 2 with why think about retirement planning now. Well, people are spending more years, 16 to 20, sound like a tough question, in retirement. Some longer. People didn't used to live as long as they are now, which is a good thing, right? Well, it's got its its problems with regard to savings and planning for retirement. A private pension plan and the Social Security are most often insufficient to cover the cost of living. What private pension plan? They're going away. They've gone away in many parts of the economy and are going away even more. So we're going to discuss your personal private pension plan. You may have heard of them called employer-sponsored plans, 401k plans, 403bs. Yes, that's what we're going to discuss in this presentation. Inflation will diminish the purchasing power of your retirement savings. Inflation is a given. For many years, it's been fairly tame, and now it's raising its ugly head, and we'll get it under control. I'm fairly confident, although nobody likes inflation. That's a whole other discussion of the Federal Reserve Bank and how inflation starts. Is it demand driven? Is it supply driven? And how do you get it under control? But I believe we're going to get it under control. I hope. Please. Okay. Anyway, slide number 3. Estimating retirement living expenses. Well, some spending patterns will change. Some expenses may go down or stop. Work expenses, maybe you have to spend a lot of money on clothing for your work. Hopefully you've paid down the debt on your housing. Hopefully. Income taxes, you'll be making less money, so taxes will go down. But other expenses will probably go up. Medical, leisure, gifts, and contributions. Some cultures and some families, they just expected that the grandparents are going to be spending on the grandchildren. Inflation will raise the amount you need to cover your expenses over your probable 16 to 20 years or more. Again, sound like a test question. Look, folks, the tricky wild card is healthcare. With our system, it is the only thing that truly scares yours truly with respect to my wife and my wife's and my retirement. Everything else, we can make adjustments, but that healthcare, oh boy, that's the scary part. So and if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back to chapter 9 and realize that each one of us is spending a ton of money on health and healthcare, whether we believe it or not. Okay, this is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and how an average older person spends their money. And fully 1/3 of it is in housing. And I'm hoping that, folks, if you do buy a home, San Diego, wherever, that by this time you will have paid down your debt, the mortgage, such that your housing costs will go down substantially, hopefully. Pray. Notice transportation. I keep teasing my wife. Do we really need 2 cars in retirement? And she goes, you can sell your car. Healthcare, 12%. Well, is it really going to be 12%? I don't know. And then food and other. Notice pension. You have to spend for your pension. I'm not sure I understand that one. But entertainment, yes. So this is it. This is, the food, clothing, and shelter, and a few other things like internet access. Planning your retirement housing. Where do you want to live? Consider the cost of living and taxes. Many people say, well, I'm getting the hell out of California. And, you can't blame them because it is a very strong economy, and a strong economy is a blessing and a curse. It's expensive to live here. Oh, by the way, did you hear that California just surpassed, I think it is Germany? I'm not sure. We're now the fourth or fifth largest economy in the world, just California. Most people prefer to stay in their homes because after 20, 30 years, it's not a house anymore, it's your home. So 6 out of 7 people will remain in their homes. And they can tap into the value of their house through what are called reverse mortgages. We briefly discussed those back in chapter 7. Look, be very careful, folks. There are horror stories, and we got some links to just a few horror stories. There are many more. Whenever you see celebrities hawking financial products, that's usually a bad sign. And I'm not alone, folks. Consumer Reports is very skeptical of these things, and other places also, other media outlets. So just be very careful. Make sure you consult an independent professional, such as a real estate lawyer or an attorney that has been, that it's been assisting your family. Continuing care retirement communities provide increasing levels of care. These things are bursting at the seams, and it's not because people are leaving their houses at any greater percentage than before. It's just that there are just more and more of us old folks out there. And again, sometimes staying in California can be a very difficult decision to make. Whether or not to stay in California can be a very difficult decision. So some people will decide to relocate. Well, be very careful. Research carefully, rent for a year or two there, rent your place here, because if you sell your place here, sure, we could buy a place cash in Arizona or New Mexico or somewhere else, or Nevada or somewhere quiet in the Southeast. If you sell your place, you're not coming back. It's that easy. It's that simple. And so we know one couple that did that, and they're kind of, they kind of like where they're at, but they sure do miss our winners. More and more Americans are retiring abroad. Costa Rica, anyone? There are many places around the world that are relatively stable and welcoming of Americans. Me gusta mucho Mexico, but you're still a United States citizen unless you give up your citizenship. So you still have to pay your federal income taxes. Now, you're not going to have to pay state income taxes anymore. But people think they go abroad, they don't have to pay their federal tax. Wrong. And healthcare is an issue. If you don't join Medicare, or cancel your Medicare, fine, you're not going to pay it. But if you then decide, oh my goodness, I'm coming back to the United States because I need better health care, then Medicare is going to go, oh, no, you just can't rejoin. They're going to go back and charge you as if you were here the whole time. And this is the dynamic. Many people, they're in good health, they'll go somewhere abroad, and then they have, looking at a serious health issue, so they want to go back to the States for the best health care and the most expensive healthcare in the world. And so Medicare goes, no, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Social Security. I mean, when we do surveys of young people, they believe they have a better chance of seeing a UFO in their lifetime than a Social Security check. Folks, Social Security is not going away. It is not going broke, as many people will say. It's got a serious underfunded issue that we will deal with, and the sooner we deal with it, the better. But The problem is, it was never meant, when it was designed, it was never meant to be the sole source of retirement income. And somewhere along the line, people got it in their heads that, oh, I don't have to worry about retirement. I got Social Security. Well, Social Security was meant to cover a third or a quarter of, that's the way it was designed back in the 1930s. And so people who haven't planned for retirement often get a very rude awakening when they find out how much Social Security is going to pay. And folks, I've met people who are living down in Mexico fairly comfortably on their Social Security checks because they said, I couldn't continue to live in the States. There was no way. Check your earnings, benefits, and statement that you receive each year. Now, they used to send it, but not anymore. They want you to go online, which makes sense. And the full benefits start at age 65 for some folks, but they've been moving up to age 67, depending on the year you were born. And as we mentioned, confidence in Social Security is low, but the problem is that it's just been asked by our culture to do more than it was designed to do. It was meant to be the third or fourth leg on a 3 or 4 legged chair or stool. So here's the schedule. If you were born before 1938, you got full benefits at 65 and 2 months, and then you see up to 1960 it goes up to 67. So in the years since Social Security was created, the full retirement age has gone up 2 years. That doesn't mean you have to wait until then. It's just that you will have your pension from Social Security reduced if you retire earlier. And you can wait up until age 70. You don't want to wait any longer than age 70 because it will not increase anymore. But the longer you wait, the more you'll get per month. This is called an actuarial schedule. And the actuaries look at how long people are going to live on average. They have their life insurance company data, which is very, very thorough. And they say, okay, if you retire now, this is how much we'll give you. And if you retire a little later, we'll give you a little bit more. And if you retire a little bit later after that. And so there is a schedule you can create using a spreadsheet, simple spreadsheet, that shows you your payoff. Okay, if I retire now at 62, I have to, I'll break even at 75. Then if I had waited a little longer, I'll start. I'm not explaining it well. My apologies. But it shows you if you retire at a certain age, how long it would take for you to catch up if you retired a couple other years later. And so some people say, well, I can wait a few years, or no, I'll start taking the money now. I don't want to wait until I'm 82 for it to catch up. So that's the calculus, the trade-off you have to make. And in general, if you're continuing to work and you feel in good health, the longer you wait, the better. But that's the issue, right? Nobody knows when they're going to kick the bucket. Slide number 8, employer pension plans. Now, I want you to remember this name, this term. You probably won't. You're not alone. We call them typically pension plans or traditional pension. But the legal term is a defined benefit plan. So remember that term, okay? It'll be on the exam. But it's important to know, especially for financial gurus such as you. Your employer will pay you a certain amount per month when you retire based on your pre-retirement salary, the number of years of service, and your age at retirement. And so these things are basically going away in the private sector. They're still readily available in the public sector. And for example, those of us who work at Southwestern, if we're faculty, we're part of CalSTRS, California State Teachers Retirement System. And when I started teaching a million years ago, folks, I took a 20% pay cut. I left the industry as a programmer. And I thought, I'll do this for a year or two. This is really interesting. And I found that I love teaching. And I'm looking at the STRS, State Teacher Retirement System, and saying, this isn't bad. if I work here, this is not bad. So I wound up staying here for 40 years, if you can believe it. I can't believe it. And so what did we do? As teachers, we pay into this system 10% of our salary, a little bit more actually now. And the college pays into the system, and then the folks who retire are paid a certain amount of money based on how much money they made, how many years of service, and the age of retirement. And so this is a pension plan, a retirement system that is not guided by your hand. It is guided by the entity that sponsors it, in this case, a governmental agency called State Teachers Retirement System. The employer, well, actually not Southwestern, but the State Teachers Retirement System based in Sacramento, they make the investment decisions for your and their contributions. But your benefit amount stays the same regardless of how the investments perform. Unless the fund goes belly up, of course. That's why it's called a defined benefit plan. Social Security is a defined benefit plan. They are very conservative with your money that you give them. They put it into treasury bonds. Remember, they want to eat, they want to sleep well. They're not interested in eating well. They're interested in sleeping well. And the same thing is true. Stars actually does have some stocks, and they, for a while there, were investing in real estate. I don't know if they still do, but it's mostly all bonds, folks. Very, very stable bonds. Okay, now, as we said, defined benefit plans, traditional pension plans, make sure you know that the two are equal to one another, they're equivalent, are employer-sponsored plans. And they are, we could consider them personal investment, retirement plans, personal because they follow you around. They're not tied to the employer or the entity that is handling the money. And there are several versions of these, but the most popular is the 401k, 403b, 457, 401a. There are several flavors of these. What stupid names. What is wrong with these people? Why do they call them 401ks? Well, the IRS calls them 401ks because that's the section of the Internal Revenue Code that says if your employer does this, this, and that, and you as the employee do this, this, and that, then the IRS will bless and kiss and let the money go in tax deferred, which means you don't pay any taxes until you take the money out. There is a provision for after-tax contributions, which you pay the taxes now, but then when you retire, you don't pay any taxes, which is very, very cool. And we'll discuss this in detail later on. But the name, why can't they come up with a better name? So the IRS says, oh yes, we also call them salary reduction plans. Now, isn't that what you want? Don't you want your salary reduced? No, can't we come up with a better name than these things? Super duper, I don't know, 401k, 403b, that's what you'll hear people say. I like employer-sponsored plans. I think that's a little bit more descriptive. Plus, as we said, there are a few other types of employer-sponsored plans, not as popular as the 401ks, 403bs. So, how do we estimate our living income? Well, every mutual fund, every brokerage firm, banks, insurance companies, they have these retirement calculators. And basically, here are two of the better ones in my humble opinion, but really what they are marketing tools. You type in all your information and they say, boy, oh boy, don't you need to save more? Here, contact one of our friendly representatives. Which is, they're in business to make money. I'm not trying to knock them, but I'm just saying that a lot of these things just really set you up for with good reason, because people do not save enough for the retirement. They just think, oh, that's so far off. I don't have to get started now. Yes, you do. And as we saw with investments, the earlier you start, right, the better. Don't forget to play the longevity game that we discussed back in Chapter 10. How long are you going to live? Well, again, nobody knows, but the insurance companies are very good at statistics, at keeping statistics, and knowing, statistically how long you have to live based on your lifestyle, your age, and a few other factors. Now, as we said, Social Security will send you an estimated benefit statement upon request. They used to send them in the mail, but now they want you to create an account and use their website, which again makes a whole lot of sense. So check out what Social Security is going to send you and realize that that's only meant to be the 1/3 or 1/4 of your needs in retirement. Right. Okay. Now, okay, everybody stretch, because now this folks, you're the financial guru now. You're the official financial guru. You have to understand these things, because more and more the employers don't want to deal with the retirement system anymore. They don't want to have a defined benefit plan. They want you to have your own benefit plan, your own defined contribution plan, which makes sense because people don't, like me, work for a company for 40 years anymore. They bounce around. And so it makes sense for the retirement plan to bounce with them. So as we said, 401ks, 403bs, 457s, the TSP, the Thrift Savings Plan, is the federal employees, any of you folks in the military or the federal government. It's a 401k plan, but it has its own section of the Internal Revenue Code. It's got its very own section. And I mean, it's only 3 or 4 million federal employees. So it's a big deal. And it's actually a very good program, very simple. In fact, we use it in Business 123, Introduction to Investments, as one of our assignments. We investigate the Thrift Savings Plan. And, as a lot of people don't work for the federal government, but we show it as an example of actually a very, very well run and fairly straightforward system for saving for retirement. Everyone who has earned income can have a traditional IRA. But then if you're self-employed or work for a small company, you might have a SEP IRA, a simple IRA, a KEO. I love that name, KEO. It reminds me of the Wizard of Oz. Yo-hee-yo, kee-yo. Anyway, you don't see too many of those anymore. But the simple IRA is great, in my humble opinion, for small businesses that have employees, whereas SEP IRA is really good for a small business that doesn't have employees. What happens? You get a tax break now. Whatever money you contribute, you get to deduct from your taxable income. And it grows tax deferred. So you don't have to pay any taxes on it until you are in retirement, in which case all withdrawals are then taxed as income. Well, that makes sense, right? Because most people in retirement are going to be in lower tax brackets. So, hey, you defer the taxes. Now, along came a gentleman by the name of William Roth. He was a senator from Delaware, and he was in his 70s in the Senate. And because he was in his 70s, even though he was still working, he had to take required minimum distributions from his retirement plans. And he wasn't happy about this. He said, look, I'm not in retirement. I'm still working. So he sponsored what was now become the not the William Roth, but the Roth IRA, named after William Roth. And he said, no, I don't want to have to pay taxes in retirement, and I don't want to have the required minimum distributions. Well, it was kind of late for him, but for everyone coming forward from him, are blessed with the ability to put money into a Roth IRA. Folks, Roth IRAs are so cool. You pay taxes now, okay, oh well. But then the money grows tax deferred until you're retired, in which case it is totally tax free. Unbelievable. And then that started with the Roth IRA, and we now have Roth 401ks, Roth 403bs. I put those in quotes because that's not what the IRS calls them. They just call them a 401k with after-tax contributions. But people refer to it as the Roth 401k, the Roth 403b. Tax break later, woo, tax-free. Again, IRS doesn't like that term. Tax exempt in retirement means the same thing. So this slide should look familiar. We briefly went over it, and I know it's kind of busy. My apologies. But one of the things that people get confused with is the retirement account and the investments that are inside the retirement account. People will say, well, what can I make in a Roth IRA? That's the wrong question. The question should be, what kind of returns can the investments in my Roth IRA create. And so I'm not very graphically inclined, my apologies, but these are supposed to look like buckets, bolsas, bins. With a regular taxable account, some people call it a non-retirement account. You'll see that in some brokerage firms and some banks and the like. The IRS calls it a non-tax qualified account, non-tax qualified. Whereas the retirement accounts, but there are educational savings accounts and medical savings accounts and health savings accounts and flexible. Those are called tax qualified by the IRS, tax qualified. But most people just call them retirement accounts. With a regular taxable account, there is no limit on your contributions. If you have $1 million, you can put it in. No limit on investment types. You want to invest in options and futures, not speculating, gambling, in my humble opinion, or do really, really scary things like shorting, which is something you want to stay far away from, folks. You can do anything in a retirement account. Any financial thing, right? No limits on the investment types. Pay taxes every year on interest, rent, and dividends, capital gains. Yes, that's a taxable account. When you walk down to the bank and open a checking account, they open up for you a taxable account legally. But if you want a retirement account, a IRA, a 401k, a 403b, there are strict limits on contributions. And remember, that was one of the questions we asked you. Not that it was important that you remember those numbers. I mean, they're easily looked up. What was more important was the process of doing it. So there are strict limitations. People, sometimes you say, what would you do with $100,000? I put it in my Roth IRA. Wrong. No, you're only allowed $6,000. What's going up next year in a Roth IRA per year. And there are strict limits on investment types. The Congress says, look, stocks are risky enough, dear citizens. You don't want to be doing options and futures and shorting and buying on margin in your retirement accounts. And so we have the strict limitations on contributions, strict limits on investment types. The money grows tax deferred, very cool, until you pull it out. Or in the case of the Roth options, it grows tax deferred until you retire, and then it is tax free, tax exempt. Although there are many subtle and not so subtle differences, the major differences are how they are taxed by the IRS, how much money you can contribute, and what you can have in your account. So let's take a look at the individual retirement arrangement. Yeah, that's actually the real word, the real term. Nobody calls it that. Everybody calls it the individual retirement account, but the IRS still uses the term that legally it is an individual retirement arrangement. It is the most popular personal retirement plan. It is now called the traditional IRA to differentiate it from the Roth IRA. Because before it was just called the IRA, but then when a Roth came along, they said, we better change the name of the original one. So they called it the traditional IRA. Contributions are normally tax deductible. And here's where there's lots of confusion, folks, but here's where some confusion comes in. People think, I make too much money, I can't contribute to a traditional IRA. That is not true. You can, if you earn income, not from, rent or dividends or interest, but if you have a job and you have earned income, whether employed, but whether as an employee or self-employed, you can put money in a traditional IRA. Now, here's where the confusion, the subtlety comes in. If you make over certain amounts, and they're pretty generous amounts, and you have an employer-sponsored plan at work, 401k, simple IRA, then you may not be able to deduct the taxes. You might not be able to deduct the contribution from your taxes. You can still contribute, then you have to remember how much was after tax and how much was before tax, and it becomes a bit of a accounting, I wouldn't use the word nightmare, but it's an annoyance, which if you're in this situation where you want to contribute to your traditional IRA, but you're not going to deduct it from your taxes, then you really must, it's incumbent upon you, it's a fancy word, incumbent, you really must save all your end of year statements forever. Because when you go to take it out, the IRS will say, hey, it's all taxable. You say, no, I put some in after tax. And they'll say, okay, show us. Now, we said there are strict contribution limits, $6,000 in 2022, going up to $6,500 in 2023, and if you're 50 years or over, you get, it's called the catch-up allowance. You get to put an extra $1,000. I don't know why they call it the catch-up allowance. I like mustard better. Anyway, oh, I'm so sorry. See what you're missing in the face-to-face class. Investment grows tax deferred. You pay taxes on the money as you withdraw it once you're retired, normally at age 59 and a half, although there's a way you can do it before then. But in general, you want to wait until you're retired. And then when you take the money out, you're going to be in a lower tax bracket. That's the idea. And as we said, we made mention of Senator William Roth, mandatory withdrawals begin in your 70s. Now, it used to start at 70 and a half. It's been pushed back to 72, and there's talk in Congress of pushing it even further, which makes sense, as we'll see when we get to our next presentation about how we're changing the nature of retirement. Yes, well, it makes sense. People are living longer. They're working longer. Makes sense. Okay, so the IRA has spawned off many siblings and cousins, the 401k, the 403b, the 457. Remember, we asked you to look at those limits. They are much more generous. $20,500 going up to $22,500 in 2023. Extra catch-up allowances in 2022 going up in 2023. SEP IRA for self-employed people, mostly people who don't have employees. Simple IRA for small businesses who do have employees. And that's still pretty, it's not as generous as the 401k, but it's still $13,500 and going up in 2023. The simple 401k is generally for people who want the higher limits for contributions, but normally don't want to have employees. It's a bit of a hybrid between the simple IRA and the 401k. And what's this? I'm sorry, I was talking about simple 401. Simple IRA, let's go back. I apologize. Simple IRA was for small businesses, less than 100 employees, and they're a whole lot cheaper, a whole lot easier than the 401k for the business. The employee doesn't care; it's not important. But the simple 401k is more. It's more of a cross between the SEP IRA and the 401k. It's more of a hybrid for an individual, like a doctor who has just or a sole practitioner, a lawyer, or somebody who just doesn't have any employees whatsoever. It's a lot cheaper than a 401k, but more generous than the simple IRA. And then, so I went too long about this. If you were to get a job in the industry and you dealt with retirement plans, you really need to study all these different versions. For you, you don't care as an employee. Somebody else is making the decision. Now, whether or not you work and whether or not you have these at work, you can still have a Roth IRA. Anyone with earned income, unless you earn too much, but then there's a way to get around that, which we'll talk about in a bit. Anyone with earned income can have a Roth IRA, even if you have a 401k at work or whatever. And then we talked about we need the quotes around here. The Roth 401k, the Roth 403b, they have the same limits as the 401k. They all work very much like the traditional IRA. If you put money in pre-tax, before tax, they mean the same thing. You get a tax break now, and then in retirement, you pay taxes when you take the money out. If you go with the Roth IRA or the Roth 401k, the Roth 403b, you don't get a tax break now, but in retirement, yippee, tax-free. Cool. So here's an example, slide 15. You contribute via your paycheck $100. Now, we're not even taking into account what often employers would do. Often employers, because they don't really want to have a traditional pension plan anymore, the defined benefit plan, they want you to go away when you retire. Thank you very much. And so they will match your contribution. You put in $100, they'll put in $50 or $100. Now, why would they do this? Well, for a couple different reasons. One, they want to retain good employees, retain good employees, and this is what they did anyway when they had a traditional benefit plan. You would put some money in your account. They would put some money in your account. So for them, it's basically the same, except now when you go away, they don't have to. Then you don't have to worry about you anymore. It's all you. So you put in $100. We're not even adding the extra $50 or $100 that your employer might put in. Your federal income tax is lowered by 25. Your state income tax is lowered by 8. Well, this depends on your marginal tax bracket. That thing we learned back in chapter 3 that you wanted to forget about. It depends, right? If you're making a lot of money, those tax brackets are higher. If you're making a little money, they're lower. So let's just take 25% and 8%. So you get a government subsidy of $33. Well, they don't send you a check, folks. They just take 33 fewer dollars out of your paycheck. So you see the whole $100 go into your account, but your take-home pay is only reduced by $67. And you might actually get $150 or $200 in your account. Now, this is very cool. Don't you agree? What's the catch? There's always a catch. Well, actually, folks, it's not that bad. You pay income tax on any amounts withdrawn in retirement, but people in retirement are usually in a lower tax bracket. And if you're not, congratulations. I hope all my students, all my clients, and myself and my wife are in this horrible situation where we're taking out so much money in our retirement accounts that we're bumped into a higher tax bracket. Isn't that a horrible situation to be in? Yes. And what if you need the money before retirement? Well, you're going to pay income tax and you pay a 10% penalty. They're going to smack your hand. Yeah. In other words, this is for retirement, folks. This is what your business used to do for you. Your employer used to put the money, kiss it, and send it on its way and come back at you when you retire. And that's what you're supposed to do. Now, there are some exceptions: first-time home purchase, qualified higher education expenses, medical disability, financial hardship, which my understanding is hard to get accepted by the IRS. And they waived, W-A-I-V-E, they removed these penalties during the pandemic, but they're back. And it makes sense, folks. You know, this is money you kiss and send on its way and invest wisely, prudently, with an eye toward long-term growth. And it comes back at you threefold, tenfold, hopefully, later on. Not for, you don't want to raid your 401k for a trip to Tahiti. No. And you might think, well, I think I feel better with a traditional benefit plan, the defined benefit plan, traditional pension plan. You know what? If you invest consistently, prudently, start early with an eye toward long-term growth and of income and capital. In other words, the investments we've discussed, maybe a balanced fund, stocks and bonds, or maybe just high quality stocks through mutual funds typically. And the world doesn't end. You have the potential to make far more and have a far better income in your retirement than if you went the traditional defined benefit plan. Of course, if you don't invest consistently, prudently, I got plenty of time, I'll wait until my 50s. Wrong. Then you have the potential to be really, really sucking air, as they say. And so it's a dual-edged sword. It gives us a really phenomenal opportunity, these defined contribution plans, but the onus is on us to do a good job, which is why we're taking Business 121. And hopefully you'll take Business 123 and learn to be awesome investment gurus. And remember, don't get too cocky. Don't panic when the markets fall and the world doesn't end. You should do okay. No guarantees. Now, what about a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k or Roth 403b? Well, you contribute to a Roth IRA $100. What do you get from the feds? What do you get from the state of California? Nothing. Your government subsidy is $100. So your disposable income, is $0. And your disposable income is reduced by $100. So why contribute to a Roth IRA? And this is what's going to, people are going to say, why are you contributing to a Roth IRA? And here's your answer. Because a Roth IRA is so cool. In my humble opinion, tax-free in retirement is a golden opportunity. No other investment choice comes close. Now, there are some tortured scenarios where it would have made sense for you to whatever. But just in general, they are, in my humble opinion, the best, absolute fabulous choice is to pay the taxes now and don't pay the taxes later. Now, okay, we're going to find that they're really not for everyone. We're not even allowed to say that. I'm saying everyone should have a Roth IRA, and you know, we're as professionals, we have to know our client and know their needs and their situation before we say they should have this. But everyone should have one, okay? And another cool thing about a Roth IRA is you can withdraw the contributions at any time without penalty. Of course, you've already paid taxes on the contributions, so this makes the Roth IRA an excellent intermediate term investment account. Great for a purchase of a house or other high-ticket item. I can't tell you how proud I am when somebody raids their Roth IRA to buy a home. And they say, well, do you think it's a good idea? I think it's a great idea. You can't live in your Roth IRA. Okay. Now you want to get started again, but you have now a home, that house that will be your home, and maybe you'll live there forever. Maybe, who knows. It's also great for college expenses. Why? Because when you filled out the FAFSA form, not the FAFSA form, people call it the FAFSA form, but it's the FAFSA form, you did not tell them how much was in your parents' or your Roth IRA. Right. In private universities, when they're doling out financial aid, they often will ask what's in your Roth IRA because they consider it disposable. You can take the contributions out. Oh well. But as the law states now, they are not used in financial aid calculations. So when people say, should I start an educational savings account for my son or daughter? I say, have you maxed out your Roth IRA yet? And they say no. I say, do that first. Do that first. And if you have extra money, fine. Because there's various things about the educational savings accounts that I'm not happy with. If you use them, they kind of penalize you. So they're great for people who know beforehand that they're probably not going to get any financial aid from the government. So that's the 529 plans, as they're called. So the Roth IRA is so cool, but the Roth IRA is not for everyone. Well, yes, it is. You just have to learn how to navigate the paperwork. You see, when they created the Roth IRA, they put limitations on the contributions depending on how much money you have, and it goes up with inflation. For 2022, it's $129,000 for a single taxpayer, $204,000 for a married couple. They can fully contribute to a Roth IRA. As your income goes up, then you're phased out how much you can actually contribute. But if you don't qualify, congratulations, you're not doing too badly. But this is why when we say our tax code is broken, we're not lying. You can still contribute to the Roth IRA anyway. If you find that you've made over the limit, what you do is recharacterize. That's the verb that the IRS uses. You recharacterize the contributions into a traditional IRA, which does not have the same income limitations before you file your taxes. And then you can convert the traditional IRA back into a Roth IRA. Folks, if you don't understand what I just said, don't worry about it because most people don't. But what you're doing is you're saying, look, I put money in a Roth IRA, but it turns out I made more money than I'm allowed to put money in a Roth IRA. So I'm going to change those contributions into a traditional IRA, which doesn't have the same limitation. And then I'm going to convert the traditional IRA immediately into a Roth IRA. Look, I've done it for people. It's not hard. It's all paperwork. You do it in one day. Who voted for these? Oh, yeah, we did. I wish they would just remove the darn limitation. It's just, there's a limitation on how much you can invest, so that's good enough in my humble opinion. But, that's why there's chocolate and vanilla, and some people like strawberry, and why Mark Twain said over 100 years ago, we have the best Congress money can buy. Okay, sorry, my apologies. Remember, in a democracy, the government is a reflection of the people. Yes, it is. Yeah, we're looking at ourselves, and it's not a pretty sight, is it? Okay, so we're almost done. Stick with us. Couple more slides. Tax credit. Tax credits. What? If you do your own taxes, don't forget this. If you have somebody do them for you, make sure you remind them, look, I put money in a Roth. I put money in a 401k and a traditional IRA. Because If you're 34,000 or less and a single filer, 68,000, which is, not a bad salary for married filing jointly, and 51,000 or less for a head of household, you could qualify for a tax credit. And remember, tax credits are cool. A dollar for dollar reduction of income taxes. So what does this mean? You put $50 a month in a Roth IRA, that's $600. You might get $300 back in tax credits for putting the money in the Roth. So, by the way, all the programs like TurboTax and Tax Act and Tax Slayer, they all handle this very well. Okay, now we talked about this Roth IRA, and we also talked about the Roth 401k, the Roth 403b with quotes around it, because that's not what the IRS calls it. Your employer, if they offer a 401k, a 403b, they don't have to, they may offer the option to place after-tax dollars in your 401k, your 403b. So the contributions work like a Roth IRA, but anything they match, right, that's pre-tax. So you wind up with this hybrid where you have to remember how much you contributed and how much was contributed on your behalf. And contributions cannot be taken out without taxes or penalties, as can be done with a Roth IRA. This option is popular with workers who are in lower tax brackets because they don't need the tax break now. My humble opinion, they're not quite as good as the Roth IRA unless your company matches your contribution. Of course, that's free money. Who's going to give you a 50% return on your money in one day or 100% return on your money? Nobody but your employer. So that's definitely a winner. But just remember, you have a bit of an accounting, I shouldn't use the word nightmare, I should use the word annoyance, because you have to keep track of all the end of year statements. Because it could be a nightmare if when you go to retire, the IRS says, oh, it's all taxable. No, I put money in after tax. And they're going to say, okay, prove it. Okay, if I don't have the end of year statements, right, you understand. Slide number 22. Folks, I told you at the beginning, Social Security was never meant to be your sole source of retirement income. There are other sources. And notice that some people are going to be working part-time. I certainly want to. I love what I do. I get to torture students, and they pay me to do it. The IRAs, the home equity in their house, I don't like that one. Be careful of those reverse mortgages. Check out the links on the website or the Canvas about how people were screwed by these horrible things. And so just the takeaway, you're going to get started earlier, right? You're going to get started earlier than most people. You're going to invest prudently, wisely. Don't panic when the markets fall, and pray that the world doesn't end. And you should do okay. Now, in our next presentation, we have a dilemma on our hands. We have a situation that 20 years ago, people were very worried about, and now we're living through it. And it seems to be okay. It's not all okay, especially with people worried about inflation. But the baby boom generation is going into retirement. And it's creating certain interesting situations, interesting being a euphemism for oh no. But in many other ways, we're handling it a lot better than we thought we would. So be prepared for our next presentation, the baby boom generation retirement time bomb. And it's not as bad as it sounds. See you in our next presentation, dear students.